The scalding coffee hit my face and white blazer with such force that I felt the liquid seep through to my skin instantly. The pain was sharp, immediate, but I didn't gasp. I didn't move. The entire conference room fell into deadly silence, as if someone had sucked all the oxygen from the air. Only the sound of coffee dripping onto the mahogany table broke the stillness. "You're nothing but a lazy assistant," Director Cromwell roared, his face purple with rage as he towered over me. "How dare you question my judgment in front of the entire executive team? You file papers. You answer phones. You don't think unless I tell you to think." 14 pairs of eyes stared from around the table. Some looked mortified, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but not one person spoke up. Not one person moved to help me as I sat there, coffee-stained and humiliated in front of the company's leadership. I slowly reached for a tissue from the table and dabbed at the brown liquid soaking through my clothes. 4 years of meticulous planning had prepared me for this exact moment. I just hadn't expected him to lose control so publicly, so completely. I stood up slowly, deliberately. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the burning sensation on my skin, "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." I reached into my briefcase, pulled out my phone, and held it up for everyone to see. "But before I continue, you should know that everything happening in this room has been recorded for the past 4 years. The color drained from Director Cromwell's face as I turned to address the board. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's time we had an honest conversation about the future of Meridian Corporation. Before I continue my story, I want to thank everyone who's been following this channel. If you're finding yourself captivated by this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you want more content like this. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next." Now back to that boardroom where everything was about to change forever. My name is Alexia Chun. Though everyone at Meridian Corp called me Alex, I was 29 years old when the coffee incident happened, with degrees in finance and information systems that no one at the company knew about. I'm naturally analytical, patient by nature, and have a memory that captures details others miss, all qualities that made me exceptional at my job and dangerous when crossed. I hadn't always planned to work as an executive assistant. My dream was to launch my own digital marketing agency specializing in data-driven growth strategies. But fresh out of graduate school with mounting student debt, I needed steady income while I developed my business plan and built my network. Meridian Corp was a mid-sized marketing consultancy when I joined, known for handling major retail chains but plagued by outdated methods and toxic leadership. I saw the potential immediately and thought I might learn valuable industry insights before launching my own venture. Then I met Director Cromwell. As the operations director, Cromwell had a reputation for being results-driven. What people whispered about in the break room was that he was also vindictive, credit-stealing, and treated staff like disposable resources. He'd climbed the corporate ladder through ruthless tactics, but told everyone he'd earned his position through pure merit. I became his assistant through an internal transfer after his previous assistant quit during her lunch break and never returned. Later, I learned she'd filed multiple complaints with HR that mysteriously disappeared from her file. "You're fortunate to have this opportunity," the HR manager told me with a fake smile. "Many would kill for direct access to Director Cromwell's operations." During my first week, Cromwell called me into his office and laid down the law. "I don't need you to think creatively. I need you to execute exactly what I tell you, when I tell you how I tell you. Are we clear?" I nodded and played my part flawlessly. The eager assistant, grateful for the chance, ready to learn from the best. Inside, I was already calculating how to leverage this position for my own advancement. For 4 years, I was the first to arrive and last to leave. I managed Cromwell's calendar, his correspondence, his client presentations, his expense reports, even his personal appointments with his wife and his secretary. I took notes in every meeting, organized his files, and became invisible in the way that only assistants truly can. Present but overlooked, listening but not acknowledged. What Cromwell never realized was that I was absorbing everything, documenting everything. I understood Meridian's operations better than anyone because I saw how all the pieces connected. I knew which clients were dissatisfied, which employees were burnt out, which strategies were failing because they originated from Cromwell's ego rather than data, and I was planning. By day, I was the perfect assistant. By evening, I was completing certifications in digital marketing and building relationships with the very people Cromwell had alienated through his arrogance. The first was Patricia Voss, the former creative director. Cromwell had forced her out after she challenged his decision to ignore emerging social media trends that our clients desperately needed. I reached out to her 8 months after her departure, claiming I needed advice on a personal project. Over dinner, I showed her my business strategy. "You've identified market gaps that Meridian could fill but refuses to," she said, impressed. "Why are you still working there?" "I'm building resources," I replied honestly. "And there's still intelligence I need to gather." Patricia leaned closer. "What if you had the right team to launch immediately?" That conversation opened doors to many others. Patricia introduced me to creative professionals who were frustrated with traditional agencies. With her innovative vision and my analytical approach, we began building the foundation for an agency that would compete directly with Meridian, but with a business model focused on authentic client relationships and data-driven results rather than ego-driven campaigns. Next came David Kim, Meridian's former lead strategist who resigned after Cromwell took credit for his award-winning campaign for a major electronics client. I found him freelancing and struggling despite his talent. "I remember you," he said when I approached him at a networking event. "You were always professional, even when your boss was being impossible." "I'm still his assistant," I admitted. "But I'm developing something I think would interest you." One by one, I connected with former Meridian employees who had left because of Cromwell's toxic management style. 7 key professionals eventually joined what we called Project Catalyst, our agency that would transform their broken careers into something powerful. We worked in complete secrecy for over 2 years. I continued performing my duties perfectly at Meridian while building our competitor during nights and weekends. The double life was exhausting, but every time Cromwell dismissed my input or took credit for my research, it fueled my determination. Then came the critical opportunity. Cromwell was invited to present at the annual Marketing Excellence Summit, but had a conflict with his daughter's wedding. Rather than miss the summit, he sent me to gather intelligence, not as a participant, but essentially as his spy. "Just collect information and materials," he instructed. "I need to know what our competitors are planning." What he didn't know was that I had already scheduled meetings with 4 of Meridian's biggest clients who would be attending the summit. Clients who had privately expressed frustration with Meridian's resistance to digital transformation and poor communication. The first was Blackstone Retail, responsible for 28% of Meridian's annual revenue. "Alexia," said Amanda Blackstone, the marketing VP, "I was surprised to get your email. Does Cromwell know about our meeting?" "Director Cromwell sent me to gather valuable information," I said carefully. "I'm gathering what I believe is most important." Over the next 90 minutes, I listened to her frustrations about Meridian's outdated approaches. Then I showed her what Catalyst Digital could offer instead. By the end of our meeting, she was intrigued. "This is sophisticated work," she admitted. "But switching from an established agency to a startup carries risks. That's why we're offering a trial period with guaranteed performance metrics," I explained. "And our team includes the very people who created the successful campaigns you already trust from Meridian." Similar conversations with tech-forward industries and Premier Lifestyle Group followed. By the end of the summit, I had preliminary agreements from clients representing nearly 70% of Meridian's business. When I returned, I gave Cromwell exactly what he expected: a detailed report on competitor presentations, new technologies, and market trends. I also recorded his contemptuous response. "This is worthless," he scoffed, tossing my carefully prepared analysis aside. "Next time, I'll send someone who can actually understand what matters in this business." I smiled and nodded, knowing that what really mattered was already set in motion. The weeks that followed were intense. Patricia secured our final round of funding. David finalized our service offerings. Legal prepared the client contracts. We leased office space downtown. Everything was positioned perfectly. We just needed the right moment for me to make my departure from Meridian. Cromwell unknowingly provided the perfect opportunity when he scheduled a board presentation to discuss next quarter's strategy. He asked me to prepare a comprehensive analysis of client retention, a topic he knew little about but wanted to appear expert on. I spent days creating a thorough evaluation showing concerning trends in client satisfaction and identifying specific improvements needed to prevent client defection. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was giving Meridian one final chance to address the very issues that would soon cost them most of their business. The morning of the board meeting, I dressed with particular attention in a crisp white blazer and navy skirt. I wore my mother's silver bracelet for confidence. I carried a small digital recorder in my pocket, though my phone's recording app was also activated. Redundancy being a crucial lesson Meridian had taught me. The meeting began with Cromwell presenting my analysis as his own work, as expected. Then he opened for questions. That's when board member Catherine Walsh asked the question that triggered everything. These client satisfaction scores are alarming. What specific actions are being implemented to address their concerns? Before Cromwell could respond with the talking points I'd prepared for him, I spoke up. If I may, Ms. Walsh, I've included a detailed action plan on page 23 that addresses each concern systematically. The room went completely silent. I had violated the unspoken rule. I had spoken without direct permission, and worse, I had implied that I, not Cromwell, had created the analysis. Cromwell's face flushed deep red. Alex is overstepping her boundaries, he said with a strained smile. Those are the solutions I've developed based on my extensive client relationships. Actually, I continued, my heart racing but my voice controlled, those recommendations come from data I've collected over the past year through client feedback sessions and exit interviews. I turned to the relevant page. You'll notice that our 4 largest clients have all identified similar issues with outdated digital strategies and slow response times. The plan I've developed would address. That's when it happened. Cromwell grabbed his coffee mug and hurled the contents directly at me. The hot liquid splashed across my face and blazer, soaking through the fabric. You're nothing but a lazy assistant, he shouted. How dare you question my judgment in front of the executive team? You file papers. You answer phones. You don't think unless I tell you to think. And there we were, back at the moment that would define everything that followed. I stood up, dabbed at my coffee-stained blazer, and pulled out my phone. Actually, I said calmly, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. I turned to address the board members, whose expressions ranged from shock to embarrassment to curiosity. For 4 years, I've worked as Director Cromwell's assistant while completing advanced certifications in digital marketing and data analytics at night. During that time, I've identified 23 critical gaps in Meridian's business model that Director Cromwell has consistently ignored or dismissed. Cromwell laughed, though it sounded forced. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further, Alex. I ignored him and continued. Last month, when Director Cromwell sent me to the Marketing Excellence Summit, not as a participant but to gather intelligence, I met with representatives from Blackstone Retail, Tech Forward Industries, and Premier Lifestyle Group. Board Chairman Robert Chen leaned forward. Our 3 largest clients. Why would they meet with an assistant? Because they've been trying to communicate their evolving needs to Meridian for years without success, I explained. And they've all now agreed to transition their contracts to my new agency. Cromwell's face contorted with fury. What are you talking about? What agency? I smiled. The agency that's backed by Patricia Voss, the creative director you forced out last year when she tried to modernize our approach. The agency that employs David Kim and the 6 other professionals you drove away with your arrogance and credit stealing. I reached into my briefcase and placed a business card in front of each board member. Clean modern design with the Catalyst digital logo and my name, Alexia Chen, founder and CEO. I didn't steal anything from Meridian, I clarified. I simply created something better. And I'm here today not just to resign, but to offer this company a chance to become our subsidiary before your stock value crashes tomorrow when our launch and the client transitions are announced publicly. Cromwell lunged toward me, but Chairman Chin and another board member restrained him. You think anyone would choose you over me? He spat, struggling against their grip. They already have, I replied evenly. 70% of your major clients have signed with us, effective next month. The tension in the room was suffocating as the implications became clear. Chairman Chun loosened his tie. Why tell us this? He asked. Why not just leave and let us discover it when it's too late? I looked around the table. Because unlike Director Cromwell, I believe in giving people opportunities. There are talented individuals at this company who deserve better leadership. My offer gives Meridian a path forward instead of inevitable collapse. I walked toward the door, then turned back to Cromwell, who had slumped into his chair, his face pale. You have until tomorrow at noon to accept my proposal. After that, We become your primary competitor with your client base already secured. I gestured to my stained blazer. Oh, and I'll be sending you the dry cleaning bill. Consider it the first of many invoices. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the eruption of panicked voices. Through the glass, I saw their faces, white with the realization that the lazy assistant they'd underestimated had just become the most powerful person in the room. 4 years of being invisible had made me unstoppable. But my story doesn't end with that dramatic exit. The real challenge was just beginning. As I walked through the office for the final time, employees stared at my coffee-stained blazer with confusion and whispers. Maya, my secretly hired coordinator who had been managing logistics for 2 months, was waiting at my desk with a garment bag. "How did it go?" she whispered as she handed me fresh clothes. "Exactly as planned," I replied. "Contact the team. It's happening." Within 2 hours, I was standing in the new Catalyst Digital headquarters, addressing the core team that had been working covertly for months. Patricia, David, and 17 others looked at me with excitement and nervous energy. "It's done," I announced. "Meridian has until noon tomorrow to accept our offer. But regardless of their decision, we launch tomorrow afternoon." David clapped enthusiastically. "Finally, no more pretending our company doesn't exist." Patricia was more practical. "What was the board's reaction? Do you think they'll accept the deal?" I considered this as I changed into a fresh blazer in the adjacent office. They were stunned. Cromwell was furious, but Chairman Chen seemed open to negotiation. He's a pragmatist, he'll do whatever protects the company and his reputation. The next 18 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Our marketing team finalized press releases, legal reviewed contracts one final time, IT prepared to make our website live. By midnight, we were ready for either outcome, Meridian's acceptance or our full launch as their competitor. I barely slept that night, not from anxiety but from anticipation. 4 years of planning, of suppressing my expertise, of documenting every missed opportunity and strategic failure at Meridian. It was all culminating in this moment. At 10:15 the next morning, my phone rang. Chairman Chen. "Alexia," he said, his voice strained. "The board has been in emergency session all night." I kept my voice neutral. "And we need additional time to consider your proposal." I had anticipated this response. "The terms were clear, Mr. Chen. The deadline is noon." "Cromwell has been removed as operations director, effective immediately," he said quickly. "We're prepared to discuss a partnership rather than a subsidiary arrangement." This was interesting but insufficient. That wasn't the offer. "Please," he said, and I heard genuine desperation. "We have shareholders to consider, employees who had nothing to do with how you were treated." I let silence hang for a moment before responding. "I'll extend the deadline to 4 p.m., not as a courtesy to the board, but out of respect for the employees who deserve better than what Meridian has provided them." I ended the call and turned to Patricia, who had been listening. 4 more hours, I told her, but proceed with the announcements as scheduled. They need to understand we're not bluffing. At 1 p.m., our press release went out announcing the formation of Catalyst Digital and our partnerships with major clients formerly aligned with Meridian. Industry publications picked it up immediately. By 2:30 p.m., Meridian stock had dropped 22%. At 3:45 p.m., Chairman Chen called again. "We accept your original terms," he said, defeated. "Meridian will become a subsidiary of Catalyst Digital." I allowed myself a small smile. "Have the paperwork ready by 6 p.m. I'll bring my team to finalize the agreement." The return to Meridian that evening was nothing like my exit the day before. The lobby was eerily quiet as I entered with Patricia, our legal counsel, and 2 board members from our side. Employees watched from doorways and workstations, whispering among themselves. In the same conference room where Cromwell had thrown coffee at me, Chairman Chen and the remaining Meridian board members waited. Cromwell was conspicuously absent. "Where is Director Cromwell?" I asked as we took our seats. Chairman Chen cleared his throat. "He resigned this morning, effective immediately." I nodded, unsurprised. "Then let's proceed." The signing took less than 45 minutes. Ownership of Meridian Corp transferred to Catalyst Digital. The subsidiary would continue operations under new management with a structured integration plan to minimize disruption. As we concluded, Chairman Chun requested to speak with me privately. The others left, leaving us alone in the boardroom. "I owe you an apology," he said once the door closed. "I witnessed how Cromwell treated you and others. I did nothing." I studied him for a moment. "Why not?" He sighed heavily. "Inaction, conflict avoidance." The quarterly numbers were acceptable enough that I could justify not addressing the problems. "Those aren't reasons," I replied. "They're rationalizations." "Yes," he agreed. "And now I've lost my company because of them." I considered him carefully. Chairman Chun was in his early 60s with decades of industry experience and connections that could still prove valuable. "You haven't lost anything yet," I told him. "You've just acquired new leadership. Whether you have a future here depends on what you do moving forward." He looked surprised. "You're not replacing the entire board?" "I'm evaluating everyone based on merit and potential contribution, not past mistakes." I stood up. "Send me a proposal for how you think you can add value to Catalyst Digital. I'll review it like any other business proposal." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "Alexia, how did you do it? How did you work for him for 4 years without revealing what you were planning?" I paused at the door. "I learned something valuable during my time here, Mr. Chun. People see what they expect to see. Cromwell expected to see a grateful, compliant assistant, so that's what I showed him. He never looked deeper because he never believed I could be more than what he defined me as." "And now you own his company," Chairman Chin said with a hint of admiration. "No," I corrected him. "I built my own company. Meridian is just an acquisition." In the weeks that followed, we implemented our integration strategy. I made a point of personally meeting with every Meridian employee to explain the changes and opportunities ahead. Many were understandably anxious, but others were visibly relieved to be free of Cromwell's leadership. "Is it true what people are saying?" asked one account manager during a department meeting. "That you recorded everything while you were his assistant?" "Not everything," I clarified. "Just the important parts." The room erupted in nervous laughter. The transition wasn't without challenges. 3 of Cromwell's loyal managers resigned rather than work under my leadership. A few clients who hadn't been part of our initial outreach expressed concerns about the sudden change, but our preparation proved sufficient. We had backup plans for every scenario. 6 weeks after the acquisition, I received an unexpected email from Cromwell. The subject line read simply, "Conversation needed." Against Patricia's advice, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived early and watched him enter. He'd lost weight, and the arrogance in his posture was diminished. "Alexia," he greeted me, attempting his old authoritative tone but falling short. "Thank you for meeting me." "What can I do for you, Cromwell?" I asked once he was seated. He studied me for a moment. "I underestimated you, clearly." "Yes," I agreed. "You did." "I want to understand something," he continued. "Was it always your plan to take over Meridian? From the beginning?" I considered the question carefully. "No. Initially, I just wanted to learn the industry while developing my own strategies. But the more I observed how you operated, taking credit for others' work, ignoring valuable input, driving away talented people, the more I realized there was an opportunity to build something superior." "Using my clients," he said bitterly. "Using relationships you neglected while you were too busy taking them for granted," I corrected. "Every client who switched to Catalyst had tried to communicate their evolving needs to you first. You weren't listening." He leaned forward. "I want to make you an offer." This was unexpected. "What kind of offer?" "I'm starting a new consultancy," he said. "With my experience and your strategic approach, we could build something significant." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're offering me a job after calling me lazy?" His expression hardened. "I'm offering you a partnership. Equal ownership." I studied him, trying to understand his motivation. "Why would I consider working with you when I've already succeeded without you?" "Because I still have connections you don't," he replied. "And resources you might find valuable." I took a sip of my coffee, letting him wait for my response. "Cromwell, Do you know why I recorded our interactions for 4 years? He frowned. Leverage, obviously. Protection, I corrected. I needed evidence of how you operated because I knew that someone like you would never accept defeat gracefully. You'd look for ways to retaliate, to reclaim what you lost, to prove you were still in control. His expression confirmed my suspicions. This meeting isn't about partnership, I continued. It's about you trying to find a way back in, to undermine what I've built. And that's never going to happen. I stood up. Your coffee has been paid for. Enjoy it. As I walked away, he called after me. You think you've won, but this isn't over, Alexia. I turned back. Actually, it was over the moment you decided I was lazy. You just didn't realize it yet. 8 months after the acquisition, Catalyst Digital was thriving. We'd retained 94% of Meridian's valuable employees while creating a healthier work environment. Our client base had expanded beyond traditional marketing into comprehensive digital transformation services. David's innovations were receiving industry recognition, and Patricia had streamlined our creative processes into a model of efficiency. I rarely thought about Cromwell until Maya rushed into my office one afternoon. You need to see this, she said, handing me her tablet. It was an industry news site announcing Cromwell's new company, Cromwell Strategic Solutions, with a focus suspiciously similar to Catalyst Digital's core services. The article quoted him directly, I'm returning to the industry with insights gained from observing others attempt to fill the void left by my departure from Meridian. I handed the tablet back to Maya. Monitor this, but it's not a concern. He's clearly targeting us, she pointed out. Yes, I agreed. And he'll fail because he still hasn't learned the fundamental lesson. A week later, I received another email from Cromwell. This one contained only a press release draft announcing that Cromwell Strategic Solutions had secured funding from a major investment firm known for aggressive acquisition strategies. I forwarded it to Patricia with a brief note, Activate Contingency Plan Echo. Within hours, our legal team had filed preemptive protective measures for our intellectual property. Our marketing department reached out to key industry journalists to highlight our upcoming service launches, and I personally called each of our major clients to reinforce our partnerships. 3 days later, I held a company-wide meeting. Some of you may have heard that Cromwell is attempting to re-enter our market space, I began. I want to address this directly because transparency is one of our core values. The room was silent, everyone's attention focused intently. Cromwell believes that business is about power and intimidation. His new venture is built on the same principles that led to Meridian's vulnerability, prioritizing ego over innovation, competition over collaboration, and profit over purpose. I clicked to the next slide, showing our growth metrics since the acquisition. Catalyst Digital exists because we believe there's a better approach. We've proven that treating people with respect, listening to client needs, and focusing on sustainable solutions creates more value than the old model ever could. I looked around at the faces watching me, people who had chosen to be part of something new, something better. Cromwell is looking backward, trying to recreate what he lost. We're looking forward. And that fundamental difference is why we'll continue to succeed while he struggles to gain traction. The applause that followed wasn't just supportive, it was determined. These people weren't just employees, they were co-creators of a vision. 4 weeks later, the investment firm that had initially backed Cromwell withdrew their support. Our industry contacts revealed that after conducting due diligence and speaking with former Meridian employees and clients, they developed serious concerns about Cromwell's leadership style and business practices. The final chapter came unexpectedly. Chairman Chen, who had indeed found a valuable role on our advisory board, requested a private meeting. I have information you should know, he said when we met. Cromwell has been approaching Catalyst employees, trying to recruit them. He's focusing on people who worked at Meridian previously, promising substantial signing bonuses. I nodded. We're aware. No one has accepted. Chairman Chen looked surprised. None. Not a single person, I confirmed. But thank you for the warning. He hesitated. There's more. He contacted me as well. Now I was interested. And he wanted inside information about your operations, your strategy. Chairman Chen looked embarrassed. He offered significant compensation. What did you tell him? I asked, curious rather than concerned. Chairman Chun straightened in his chair. I told him that I'd made enough mistakes with Meridian by enabling his behavior, and I wouldn't make the same mistake with Catalyst. I smiled. Thank you for your loyalty, Chairman Chun. It's not about loyalty, he replied. It's about finally choosing to do the right thing. The next day, I received a hand-delivered envelope. Inside was a brief note from Cromwell. You win. I'm leaving the industry. I didn't respond. There was no need. This had never been about winning or losing for me. It had been about creating something valuable, while proving that success doesn't require sacrificing ethics or dignity. 1 year to the day after the coffee incident, I stood at a podium accepting an industry award for innovation in digital marketing. As I looked out at the audience, I saw faces of people who had been part of my journey: Patricia, David, Maya, Chairman Chun, and dozens of others who had chosen to believe in a different kind of leadership. This award recognizes innovation, I began my speech. But the real innovation at Catalyst Digital isn't just in our technology or strategies. It's in our approach to business itself. We've proven that listening is more powerful than dictating. That collaboration creates more value than domination. And that sometimes the most impactful person in the room is the one nobody noticed. I paused, looking at the award in my hands. A year ago, someone told me I was nothing but a lazy assistant. Today, I lead a company that's redefining our industry. The difference between then and now isn't that I suddenly gained value. It's that I finally claimed the value I always had. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who has ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. It was for everyone who knows they're capable of more than others believe they are. As for Cromwell, I heard he moved to the West Coast and opened a small consulting firm. Sometimes I wonder if he ever truly understood what happened, how his biggest mistake wasn't throwing that coffee, but failing to recognize the potential in the people around him. I never sent him that dry cleaning bill, by the way. Some debts can't be calculated in dollars and cents, and some victories don't need to be rubbed in to be complete. If you've stayed with my story until now, thank you. Perhaps you've been underestimated too. Perhaps you're biding your time, building something in silence while others dismiss your potential. Remember, being underestimated is a gift if you know how to use it. People who don't see your value won't see you coming until it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth, and leave a comment about a time when someone underestimated you. I read every one of them because, unlike some people, I understand that every voice matters, especially the ones others try to silence.